Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Thursday, July 29th, 2021. It is the 210th day of the year, and as always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that webpage and click on the link that says Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will show you a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to some great advantage for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships. And you can also download the actual tool itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click it and download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also get access to a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have either been working through the worksheet process live on the show, or they've given testimonials about how effective and positively it's affected their lives by using these tools. Or we're talking about some of the dynamics behind how something so simple can be so effective. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app. And that app contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do that soon and often, because that tends to spark comments, questions, answers. And if you have any of those, you can give us a call at 563-999-3581 and press 1. And that will put a question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce it by your area code, and we can have a conversation. You can also email Jeanie at JEANIE at whyagain.org, WHYAGAIN.org. Or you can email me directly at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. And we will do our best to talk about your comments or your questions on the air, and then you can get access to them through the archives. The archives of the show are available for the past 10 years plus at whyagain.org, and just click on the picture of the microphone. And then you can scroll down to the year and pick the month and the day and get access to any of the shows we've done over the past 10 plus years. We're also doing the Course in Miracles workbook lessons this year, and it's the 210th day of the year, which means today's lesson is continuing the review. And we're reminded that I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as the Creator created me. And then today is a review of Lesson 190, which says, I choose the joy of creation instead of pain. My pain is my idea. It is not the idea of a creator, but one I thought apart from creation and from its will. Its will is joy and only joy for its beloved offspring. And that I choose. I choose joy instead of what I made, which is the pain, the fear, the sadness, the hurt, the negative emotional states. So, fairly simple lesson, fairly simple review. I choose the joy of the Creator instead of pain. Pam Grout, in her book, The Course in Miracles Experiment, Lesson 210, is titled, I know you're not, parentheses, a body, but what am I? And she quotes Veronica Tugaliva as saying, we speak about losing our minds as if it's a bad thing. I say lose your mind. Do it purposefully. Find out who you really are beyond your thoughts and beliefs. Lose your mind. Find your soul. Pam writes, the Tarahumara Indians in Copper Canyon, Mexico, run 100 miles a day without struggling, without training, without doing all the necessary drills encrusted in old beliefs. They defy every known rule of physical limitation because no one ever told them they can't. Running to the Tarahumara is a joyful, sacred experience, and every Tarahumara knows the older you get, the faster you run. And like the Course says, they find confirmation for their beliefs. In 1993, a half dozen Tarahumara were brought to the Leadville Ultra, a grueling high-altitude marathon over the scrabbly trails and snowy peaks of the Colorado Rockies. It was apparent from the starting line that the toga-wearing runners were nothing like the other runners. The other runners were nervously monitoring their pulses, somberly preparing for what they long believed to be a, quote, near impossible feat, close quote. The middle-aged Tarahumara were laughing, shooting the breeze, smoking butts, and wondering if they should abandon the sandals they made from rubber tires in exchange for the Rockport cross trainers that were offered by their sponsors. 20 hours later, they stunned the running world when 55-year-old Victoriano Churro came in first, followed by his Tarahumara buddies, Churildo Chacarito in second and Manuel Luna in fifth. Physiologist David Groom ran cardiovascular tests on the Tarahumara runners and discovered that their blood pressure went down when they were running. As this review promises, they escaped the bondage of the world. This review in Course in Miracles workbook lessons is telling us that we can escape the bondage of the physical world, that what we expect, we experience, that we are co-creators, that we are the creators of our life experience. So that's our Course in Miracles lesson for today and our Course in Miracles experiment commentary from Pam Grout. And we have 50 minutes left, or almost 50 minutes left, to take your comments, questions, answers. 563-999-3581. Today is, it's a Thursday, if I'm correct. And that means we've got another Mindshifter support group tonight from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time. And we would appreciate it if you would join us or pass this information along to somebody that you think might benefit from joining us. The information on how to join that meeting, absolutely free, is available at mindshiftersacademy.org. And there's a separate login page for Tuesdays versus Thursdays. And you never know what we'll get into. We might listen to a lecture. We might just do worksheets. Tuesday, most of the session was spent with me doing a worksheet and then discussing it, and other people discussing their issues triggered from that worksheet. So let us know how we can support you. What would be a topic you would like us to explore today? 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. What's on your mind? I am preparing for later today where I will do an interview with Robert Whitaker, who is the author of 2 powerhouse books on mental health issues. One of them is titled Anatomy of an Epidemic, trying to figure out how our mental health disability claims to our government are going up year after year, and how that makes sense if we have such powerful, effective medications from the psychiatry field and from the drug companies. Why are we seeing more and more people disabled through their mental health problems to the point of filing for disability? And the other book that he's written is Mad in America, which tracks the history of doctors trying to treat mental illness from the 1700s to the current time. And the message is, if you take medication, please try and take the least medication possible for the shortest period of time to achieve the desired results, and make sure that you understand that is not healing, that is just treating symptoms. And if the medications work well for you, hopefully they will give you enough energy and vitality so that you will be able to use tools like the ones Michael and Jeannie offer at whyagain.org, or you will be able to engage a therapist who is trauma-informed to help sort out how life events may have left you with the experience of trauma and the residual energies of trauma, the false negative beliefs that are often downloaded as a result of trauma, and work through that so that you can be moving towards healing in your life as opposed to simply treating the symptoms. Because to date, there is no treatment for the symptoms that are listed as mental health issues that do not create more problems. The medical treatments, there are none that don't create more problems than they fix over the long haul. And so hopefully within a few weeks, that interview with Robert Whitaker will be available at journeysdream.org/podcast. And that's developed into quite a nice little resource that I would recommend to people. If you know somebody who's struggling with mental health issues and they're not very satisfied with the allopathic medical or the current model of medical treatment for mental health, which is usually drugs, and more drugs, or simply talk therapy and drugs, direct them to the On Your Mind podcast hosted by Journey's Dream, because there are now over 60 interviews with people who've either survived their own mental health adventures and or who are practicing holistic, integrative, or functional medicine approaches to helping people through their mental health challenges. And there might be some perspectives and or resources in those interviews that would be of great value to the people that you know who are either having their own mental health issues or watching a friend or a family member struggle with a mental health issue. So 563-999-3581. You can call that number and press 1, and we'll have a conversation. I was pleased to read through the list of horrors in Robert Whitaker's book that there is some evidence about what does work, what does really help people have decidedly better long-term outcomes if they have a serious mental health issue. And the thing that works is treating people with respect, treating them with loving kindness, teaching them how to have, gradually increasing more authority in their own life, and having minimal contact with the medications, which, as we just mentioned, have increasingly more negative effects the longer people are on them. And not too surprisingly, the Quakers, who had a very humanistic approach, had one of the more powerfully effective approaches, which was create a loving, clean, safe, respectful environment and engage people with listening and daily activities for personal hygiene and art and music and exercise. And over time, the majority of people, even with schizophrenia as a diagnosis, with psychosis and hallucinations, the majority of those people have far better outcomes than people who are treated with medications. So, again, we read in books like The Course in Miracles that love is all there is and love is the answer, but in real life, with serious difficulties, life experience actually demonstrates the truth of that. What's the best treatment for someone who is psychotic? It's not to be loaded up with medications that lock down their nervous system and cause pain and muscle spasms and mimic a bunch of other diseases. It's to be treated with respect and nurturance and support. And even the long-term follow-ups indicate a far better outcome. One of the chapters in the book, or one of the segments in the book, is titled, let's see, so I think it's Better in Nigeria is one of the chapter titles. And so a whole series of studies indicate that the developing countries who don't have as many medications and psych hospitals, and they have far better outcomes for people who experience a psychotic episode or would get the label of schizophrenia here in America. And it's mind-boggling. If these medications that we give people are so effective, why are people in countries where they don't have those medications getting such better results? So, if you know somebody who's struggling with mental health issues, there's a really nice resource developing. There's another really good one, which is samehereglobal.org, SAMEHERE global.org. And this is another website that's full of practitioners who have had their own issues and or have had family members who have issues. And so they've been motivated to look for approaches, healing dynamics, etc., that have better results and far fewer negative impacts. So samehereglobal.org and or journeysdream.org So how can we support you today? What is on your mind? What would be a useful topic? We've had a whole series of things this week. I think I've gone back and looked at the list of worksheets that are available on whyagain.org. I've had several occasions this week in my therapy sessions to mention to people the tool of the worksheet that's available that's titled 3 Early Memories of Conflict. And it's always interesting when I'm talking to somebody who's never been exposed to this kind of work before, and when I talk to them about how that particular tool, that worksheet itself, is designed to help me understand how my life as an adult has essentially been driven by patterns that I downloaded in my first 6, 7, or 8 years. It's mind-boggling, and some people, think it's absolutely crazy. However, for those of us who've used a tool like that and have seen that with that tool combined with the reality management worksheet and or something like EFT tapping, they've seen the positive changes in their lives. It's no longer a fantasy. So that tool simply asks me to think about 3 of my earliest memories of conflict. One of the big traps with that tool is that people say, well, I don't remember much of my childhood. And we say, okay, so what's one of your earliest memories of conflict? And they say, I just told you I don't remember my childhood. And I say, okay, do you remember your 20s or your 30s? Do you remember something from last week or 2 years ago? Well, yeah, then use one of those. And when you get 3 of those memories of conflict, you write out the actual, a thumbnail sketch of what was going on and how old you were on the form. And then you go back through the form, and for each one of those memories of conflict, you do the sentence completion. Life is, I am, I need, I feel, relationships are, people are, as though you were the age you were at the time of the conflict. So, for instance, one of the ones that that came up one of the first times I did that worksheet was I was about 9 years old, and I was, because I'd had a trauma where I'd fallen into the lake and had a physical wound and was crying and soaked wet, I was isolated from the rest of the kids, and I was a witness to an angry exchange between my mother and father and a neighbor who was not a very reputable character. And my mother was setting healthy boundaries, but she was doing it with anger. And my father was being, timid. And so I downloaded this energy, and that was one of the first, memories of conflict that came up when I was doing this worksheet. And so I put that on the list, and then I filled it out, and I had a couple of others, another one maybe from high school, another one from, in my 20s. And when I came back and started looking at the pattern, I was shocked to realize that the kinds of the ways I handle conflict as an adult are almost exactly the same as the way I handled it when I was 9 years old. I shut down, I withdrew, I would do anything to make other people happy. I was basically, in a way, mimicking what my father was doing, not what my mother was doing. And so as I continue to use that tool and realize that as a competent adult, I'm not really using my communication skills, my psychology training. I'm not using my resources very effectively. I'm basically responding like a scared, wounded 9-year-old most of the time when conflict arises. And let's say I was probably introduced to that tool 16 years ago and have been using it a number of times since then in the support groups and then doing worksheets on some of the issues that come up. And I can say with complete confidence that the way I handle conflict and confrontation today is light years different than what it was before I found that tool. And so if there's something that you would like to change for the better about the way you handle conflict and confrontation, there's an absolutely free tool available at whyagain.org. It's called the 3 Early Memories of Conflict. And after you click on the link in the home page that says Start Here, just scroll down the list of worksheets that are there until you find that. Click, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. It's absolutely free. And if you're like most of us, it will be quite the eye-opener when you realize how so many of your adult interactions, and I say that with adult in quotes, how many of your adult interactions are really just replaying the trauma patterns that you downloaded as a child or a preteen. And again, if you're like most of us, there's a lot more potential for you to respond from a mature and a more flexible, a more productive response pattern as an adult than the way you responded when you were a traumatized child. However, you can't get access to those more mature coping skills and better sense of self if you're triggered to the trauma response, if you don't go in and dismantle the energies around the trauma response, whether they're beliefs or emotions or actual trauma energy in the physical system, then you will simply remain at the mercy of those automatic response patterns whenever they're triggered. So there's another way that the tools that are made available can help improve your life. And I highly recommend going to that 3 Early Memories of Conflict worksheet and downloading it, reading it, filling it out, maybe even calling the internet show and getting Michael or Jeannie to help you step through it if it's not completely clear intuitively, because my personal experience has been that was a life-changing tool. Or that I should say it this way, my use of that tool has helped me change my life. The tool by itself doesn't really do anything, but I have actively applied it. I have listened to that lecture probably 15 or 20 times in the support group over the years, and each time it comes up, almost every time it comes up, I redo the worksheet, and I get a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper, a little bit more nuanced appreciation for how early patterns in my life, when I was, only had access to the primitive coping mechanisms of, denial and rage and things like that, how those patterns were driving my interactions as an adult. And hopefully you can see the value in being able to get access to your more mature coping mechanisms and your life experience on an ongoing basis actively in life, rather than having your traumatized 9-year-old response patterns getting activated and taking over and driving the bus every time there's a conflict or a confrontation. I know that my ability to stay in a discussion, my ability to negotiate rather than shut down, my ability to tolerate other people being angry has dramatically increased the more I've used that tool. And I hope you can see that that would be a tremendous benefit to somebody who is an adult. I'm a father. I'm a psychologist. I'm a coach of roller hockey for my sons, and all these different roles that I found myself in over the years, where when conflict or confrontation would come up, I would shut down or acquiesce, give in, maybe not hold my boundaries as well as I would have wanted to. And with the use of that tool, actively applying it and then doing reality management worksheets, I can honestly say it's very different today than it was 15 or 16 years ago. The way I respond when people are triggered to upset. And it gives me more flexibility, it gives me better results, and I would go so far as to say as everyone around me has benefited from my use of that tool. So there's another thing we can talk about, 563-999-3581. Give us a call and press 1 or type your question or comment in the chat room, and we'll discuss it. Give us some grist for the mill. What would you like us to talk about or discuss or explain? I think I was hitting it pretty strongly yesterday, the idea of making sure that we do not put people on a pedestal, making sure that we tap into all of the various ways that we can actively observe day in and day out that in most ways people are the same. Everybody is just a person. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has the same kinds of struggles. Everybody's got access to the same patterns of emotions and ranges of emotion. And the trap that comes from buying the fantasy that our culture teaches about how certain people are so much better. I have to celebrate people like Simone Biles for being one who spoke out against abuse and being one who is now opting for her own personal mental health above what the coaches or fans might want her to do, and whether she's got access to really good tools or not, she has some access to some pretty solid internal strength to be able to go against our culture and our win at all costs kind of culture. I often wish there was a way to amplify the outreach to the tools that Michael and Jeannie make available absolutely free, to get more people exposed to this, because I've seen such tremendous positive benefit in my life, and I have every reason to believe that those kinds of results are available to people, day in and day out, without need for a doctorate in clinical psychology, and just actual application of the tools, willingness to see what's there to be seen, willingness to understand more deeply how does the mind-body energy system work, willingness to keep evaluating every time I have a negative emotion, how am I focused on things that I don't have any control over here? That's been a big theme in sessions the past few days, and especially for 2 sessions already this morning. How do I change my situation and my negative emotion when my mind keeps telling me I'm only feeling this way because so-and-so is doing such and such? Well, the answer is I will never change my emotional state for the better if I believe I'm only feeling this way because so-and-so is doing such and such. Whether it is, a 37-year-old offspring living with a 60-some-year-old parent who is not being responsible and not making moves to live independently and basically taking advantage of the parents' goodwill and finances, or whether it's a partner in a marriage who is feeling that the pattern that's developed between him or her and their spouse is abusive. In either case, if I focus on my partner, if I focus on my offspring, if I focus on my parent, there is no way I can move to a better emotional state or a productive resolution of that situation. Yes, but he, yes, but she, and the yes, but syndrome is pretty powerful in the beginning. Yeah, but didn't you hear what I said? Didn't you hear what I just told you that she did and what he's done? And I understand that. And I understand that's not what's creating your negative emotions or my negative emotions in that situation. And until I can wake up to that actuality, until I can fully embrace and explore, observe and explore the dynamic of what creates emotions in me, I will remain a prisoner of the what if, yes, buts. And if you're looking for liberation, Michael and Jeannie have the answer. It's in the tools, in the application of the tools, the reality management worksheet, the targeted journaling that Michael calls the mind shifter tool, the 3 early memories of conflict. I like to add the EFT tapping and some other energy work, but it's all focused on the same thing. It's all built on the realization that I only, always, and forever experience emotions that are created inside my mind-body energy system. And the mechanism for that is whatever the interpretation is that I create and apply to my life situation or to these other people's behaviors, that is what is resonating the upset that's in me. That is what is either creating the negative emotions I'm experiencing in this moment or resonating negative emotions that I've downloaded into my energy system years ago. And the only way out is through. The only way for me to move forward is to recognize that I'm creating what I experience. So if I don't like what I'm experiencing, I need to be able to stay focused on what is that process within me? How am I doing it? And what might I step into to engage my own tools differently? Can I stop doing the same thing over and over again that continually leads to results I don't want? There's the first step. Can I figure out how, whatever it is I'm doing that I seem to have such powerfully good reasons for doing it, how can I figure out the angle from which I can view that to say, oh, Tim, you're doing the same thing over and over again. No wonder it's not working. It didn't work the first 117 times you did it, so it's not going to work the next 27 times you do it. Once I do that, and especially if I've got access to powerful tools, the application of those tools has the potential to open the door for my liberty. And, the more you talk to people, the more stuck they are, the more they want freedom, the more they want liberty, the more they want relief. So the hope is, and the goal with this work is, that we don't have to wait until people are hitting rock bottom, so they're feeling completely overwhelmed and desperate and or suicidal, that we can encourage people by sharing our process, like I did yesterday with the worksheet process. Here's a regular kind of an occurrence that happens. I'm on the weekend, I'm in a safe environment, and all of a sudden I read an email, and the interpretation that I generate related to that email resonates rage in me. Well, most people that are hearing this can identify with getting a letter from somebody or getting an email or listening to a voicemail from somebody and having a rage response as a result, or a fear response, or a hurt response, or a confusion response. And as long as I believe that my rage, my hurt, my fear, my confusion is created by that voicemail or that email or that letter, I remain a prisoner. I remain a victim. But as soon as I realize every emotion I experience is an internal creation, and I train myself to interrupt the pattern of searching the outside environment for what I need to run away from, or what I need to attack, or what I need to bribe or seduce to get it to change, the sooner I look inside and keep my focus there and apply actual tools that help me explore the process I'm using to create that negative emotion, the sooner relief is on its way. The sooner I stop the process that's actually creating the painful, fearful, sad, hurt response and open myself to an entirely different experience of myself and of the flow of creative force moving through me. And that's the goal. Wake up to the awareness, the conscious, active awareness of your true nature as part of this flow of creation. So, that's what we're here to support and promote, and the tools for doing that are available at whyagain.org, and there's a support group tonight from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central, and we have time for a comment. We've got another 14 minutes left. 563-999-3581. What's on your mind? What would serve you to discuss or explore for the next 12 or 13 minutes? I found that passage from the book that I was referring to earlier, Better Off in Nigeria. And the book is called Mad in America. So there was a gentleman named Mosher who ran an experiment, and he was part of the, I think it was National Institute of Health. And basically his experiment was, let's see how much better people get or how much worse they get if we put them in a loving environment, nurturing, supportive environment without meds, than if we just give them meds. And he called the project Soteria, Soteria. And it was highly successful, and then he got attacked for it because, it's going against Big Pharma and the American Psychiatric Association. And eventually it got shut down, and they attacked his career and all that good stuff that would normally happen. So then there's a segment of the book after he talks about all that where he says, Better Off in Nigeria is the title of this. And here's a segment that I highlighted. Mosher's experiment and the court battles had occurred at a very particular time in American history. The civil rights movement, protests against the Vietnam War, and Watergate all made the 1970s a time when disenfranchised groups had a much greater opportunity than usual to be heard. Ken Kesey's book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, suggested that even crazy people should be listened to. That was the societal context that made it possible for the clash between the two realities. One reality experienced by patients, and the one we as a society believed in. And it made it possible for these two to clash momentarily and become a matter of public debate. With the demise of the Soteria Project, the debate officially ended. In the 1970s passed into the 1980s, and lingering protests by patients over their drugs were dismissed. And they were dismissed as simply the rantings of crazy people. As Edward Shorter declared in his 1997 book, A History of Psychiatry, antipsychotic medications had initiated a revolution in psychiatry and made it impossible for patients with the diagnosis of schizophrenia to lead relatively normal lives without being confined in institutions. That became the agreed-upon history, and not even repeated findings by the World Health Organization that said schizophrenics in the developed countries fared much worse than schizophrenics in poor countries disturbed that view. But the truth is, when the World Health Organization launched a study to compare outcomes in different countries, the results were mind-boggling. At both 2- and 5-year follow-ups, patients in 3 poor countries, India, Nigeria, and Colombia, were doing dramatically better than the patients in the United States and 4 other developed countries. So, the World Health Organization did its own study, and basically the result of the study was loving, respectful, nurturing, supportive care is highly preferable for outcomes, not just the experience of the patients, but the actual outcomes long term, preferable to the drugging regimen that so many people are subjected to. So, hopefully there will be even more to say about that after I've interviewed Robert Whitaker later this afternoon, and I'll look forward to the opportunity to share those insights here as I look forward to 5 days a week sharing access to the tools that can help you move toward healing, and those are available at whyagain.org. So what's on your mind? What have we stirred up with our comments and our little readings today and our recommendation to use the tool, the 3 Early Memories of Conflict? 563-999-3581. Give us a call and press 1 and contribute to making this next 6 or 7 minutes useful to you. How can we be of service? What is on your mind? What is on your mind? On Your Mind, by the way, is the name of the podcast hosted by Journey's Dream. Coincidentally? Probably. Coincidentally, I ask on a regular basis, what's on your mind here on Mind Shifters Radio? 563-999-3581. I'm also in the process of reading and looking for an interview with a gentleman who's a psychologist, and he's writing the story, The Struggle to Be, a psychologist's view from both sides of the locked door. And hopefully, as we interview people who have been through those struggles and people who have had help from the holistic and the integrative and the functional medicine approach, we'll have even more resources to suggest for people, whether they're struggling with mental health issues or they have a family member or a friend who's struggling with mental health issues. And, my hope is to simply keep adding resources to the ones that Michael and Jeannie are already making available at whyagain.org. And resources not just for the what do I do with my anger or my fear or my sadness, but resources for even the more intrusive types of spiritual adventures or crises or mental health episodes that people have. Because the fact of the matter is, there's nothing that you'll find in the worst of the worst psychiatric hospitals or facilities that doesn't have its roots in what every one of us experience and struggle with every day. The thing that separates us from others is, are we more flexible? Are we too flexible? Are we more rigid? Are we too rigid? But the same basic dynamics, the same hopes and fears, the same desires for belonging and connection, the same challenges in relationship and the challenges in perception that keep us in the conflicts we're in, because we are unaware of how active our perceptual process is. We're unaware of the fact that the pictures that show up in our minds are not an accurate representation of the outer world. They are 80 or 90% formed by our past experiences and our biases and our prejudices and our woundedness. And we're not aware of that. We think we open our eyes and we look out and we see the world just as it is. This is why I have so many couples that come into therapy and he says, she is so abusive. And as soon as he's done talking, she opens her mouth and she says, he is so abusive. And I didn't do any of the stuff that he just told you I did. And then the partner opens his or her mouth and says, wait a minute, she's lying to you. I never did all those things she just said I did. Well, how could this happen? These are people who function at jobs outside the home. These are competent adult individuals. They drive cars. They shower their bodies daily. They help raise children. They function at jobs. And if you listened to them without the understanding of how active our process of perception is, you would think that either one of these or both of these people are hallucinating. They're psychotic. Because he's hearing her say and do things that she swears she never said and did, and she is hearing him, seeing and hearing him say and do things that he swears he never did. Well, how could that be? Either they are each creating a very different picture in their minds through this very active process we call perception, or one or both of them are psychotic, and they can't tell the difference between the fantasy thoughts in their head and the events in the outside world. And my vast experience in therapy for 47 years leads me to the very solid conclusion that it is not that they are psychotic. It is that each of them is participating very actively in the process of perception, and they don't know that. We are not taught in our schools and in our families, even in our schools of higher education. We are not taught how active the process of perception is and how we are literally creating our experience of life moment to moment. We are literally creating the images that show up in our minds and that seem so clearly to be an accurate representation of the outside world. And we are not taught the way the Course in Miracles would teach us of the distorting power of the way we want things to be. And we are not taught about how if I'm carrying a trauma from the past and it gets resonated into activity, it becomes a part of the filter, a part of the core construct that shows up in my mind as my perception of the world in this moment. So, whether you like Michael and Jeannie's tools or you find some other tools, please find tools that help you observe and then work with these actualities of life. You are constructing your experience of life moment to moment. So, we've reached near the end of our hour. I see Jeannie on the switchboard, but she hasn't turned her microphone on yet. So I will remind us one more time that we have a support group tonight from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central. And I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And I'll say welcome, Jeannie Ryce.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. I appreciate you. And welcome to the middle of the week. Or I guess we're past the middle of the week now.
Yeah, it's a Thursday. So have a great show.
Thank you. Bye.